What's up, y'all? This is Neena Perez, and this is Straight Talk, No Sugar Added. What is up? Can you believe that we are still alive, which is always a good thing? Now, you know I go around this freaking awesome planet finding the best humans I can find to come on here to grow, challenge, and transform your thinking. Now, I found this really cool dude, right? He's Canadian. He's cool. He's lax. I'm liking this guy, okay? His name is Ryan Fahey. He's a multifaceted entrepreneur. He's a 4-time author, a professional speaker who specializes in personal growth and well-being. He owns Fahey Consulting, a firm dedicated to elevating people in small organizations. And he has the latest book on remote work, well-being. Boy, do I need that, Ryan. I think I got to go run and get that right after this. And it's topped the Amazon charts in Canada and gained international recognition. Now, outside of work, he enjoys outdoors activities and quality time with his family. And I'm super stoked that you're here because I can't wait to get into this conversation. How you doing, Ryan?
Good, Neena. Thanks for that awesome introduction. And for everyone listening in, welcome. This is going to be a fun chat. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm glad you're here. I mean, I have like so many friends in Canada. I ever since the pandemic,
Yep.
I have been meeting so many people, but most of them are from where you are, like up north, and they are so freaking cool. I'm like, yeah, I mean, I need to move to Canada. I think I like you guys better.
Yeah, absolutely. Come on up.
So Ryan, here's how I always start the show. I don't know if you ever listened to any of our episodes, but I always start with the same question, which is, who are you? Because it's always interesting to me where people go with this. So who are you, Ryan?
Yeah, absolutely. So I got to say first, I'm a husband. So my
Awesome.
wife and I actually just celebrated our 5-year
Oh,
anniversary.
you're babies.
Yeah, I know, right? So super exciting.
That's
Um,
wonderful.
we've also, in that growth, we've purchased a puppy. So our home has a little bit more love in it now. We have a 7-month-old puppy. So I'm a dog
Love
dad as
it.
well for any
What
dog
kind of
owners out there.
dog? What kind of dog?
He's a miniature dashhound. So
Oh my God.
yeah,
So
yeah.
cute.
And his name is Dash, which is great.
I
Um,
love it.
yeah. It's funny, Neena, how attached you get to them. Like
Mhm.
like my wife and I were talking the other day, we're like, how did we live our lives without
I
without a
know.
pet?
I know.
You just fall in love with them. But yeah, so we love it here. We've recently bought a house and done all the adult stuff. But life is good. That's kind of, the main, I guess that's my why, my creating
Yeah.
or supporting my family and building our marriage and our home here. And then, yeah, full time, I do work supporting well-being in schools. And like you mentioned in the intro, run a business as well on the side and write books. So I've had a very interesting journey, and it's changing every day. The bingo card is always a surprise, but
Yeah.
it's a lot of fun. I love the ride, so it's great to be here.
Is that something that you always wanted to do or always were into? Like writing books and all about well-being, or was that something you grew up with, stumbled into? Tell me a little bit about that journey.
Yeah, so it actually goes back to when I was 12 years old. So at that point in my life, I was actually getting a lot of migraines, and I was doing a bunch of tests. No one could figure out why am I getting these headaches. And I was part of this research study at a local university in
Mm.
Canada. And basically, what they said is go and document your day to day, and we're going to see if there's any breadcrumbs here for intervention. And so, basically, I track my sleep, my eating, my physical activity over the course of a month, and then documented the days I had severe migraines and no migraines at all. And turns out, at the end of the study, what I found out is that the days that I was active, I ate better and I slept better and I
Uh,
didn't get any migraines. And so at 12 years old, that's like a foundational revelation, right? To be like,
yes,
okay,
big
like
time.
I need to move, I need to be physically active so that I feel good and I can enjoy school and play sports and all that and be healthy. So it really stems back from that. It put me on this different trajectory. I picked up running. I wasn't very good, but I had fun and I enjoyed it. I spent a lot of time hiking in the woods. I lived in the country. And really ever since that moment in my life, wellness has been not only something I pursue, but I've been very blessed to make a career out of it.
That's awesome.
To speak about it, to work with schools on that, to write books about it. It's just been a real blessing, I guess, now that I look back. But at the time, obviously, just a monumental shift in my life. So that's kind of what's led me here, and kind of led me down the path of well-being and pursuing that and helping others too. So
That's a really deep thought too for a 12-year-old, right? To kind of recognize that. I think it also like served you that you were in a trial, because maybe you wouldn't have noticed, but because they were tracking things, it became evident, right? You think that's true?
yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah.
I'm grateful that like this was a new type of study as well. So I'm grateful that I even had that opportunity
Yeah.
because, we're so quick to medicate, but sometimes we just have to listen. And,
Hmm. Hmm.
I had to listen to my body, and it was telling me something. And even to this day, X amount of years later, if I'm, not active 3 or 4 days in a row, I start to get headaches.
Mm.
So it's kind of funny, right? How that stuff kind of sticks with you, but yeah, you
Yeah.
just listen and you just roll with it and make a new life from it. So that's kind of where I've taken it. Yeah.
What's really cool about that too, right? Is that if you didn't, and I'm just like my brain just goes there with the curiosity thing, but I'm like thinking if you didn't go there and have the study and have that awareness, you probably would have lived with that most of your life, not knowing what's actually triggering it or what makes you feel better. And, I think wellness is such an important thing. It's something I'm learning now as an adult, right? I wish I knew this younger. And I realize, like, speaking to people like you who are really like in tune and trying to really impact the world in a way to make them healthier and better and think about their choices and what they're doing, is that had you had not known that, you probably would have just gotten headaches now and just thought they were still just headaches, right? Not realizing that, wait, I haven't worked out in a couple of days. Maybe I haven't been eating that well. Let me shift that a bit, start to feel better. And I think that's what most of us, and I don't know about Canada because I've never really lived there or anything, but in the US, right, we have an obesity problem. We all know this. And we also have a lot of autoimmune conditions and headaches. Like, this is a real thing, you know? I know for me, not taking care of myself, working 14-hour shifts, always working day and night and doing all of that stuff and never taking care of me, put me in a position now that I'm dealing with really hard autoimmune conditions, right? But things that doctors don't really talk to you about. So I
Hmm.
had to go see a naturopath and get myself on a natural remedies, and I'm starting to feel better. I say all that to say that what you're doing is not a small thing, right? Because you're
Hmm.
impacting people's lives for real. And I feel generationally, right? So it's like a legacy, because
Hmm.
once taking care of myself, I talk to my grandkids about it. I talk to my kids about, right? So now I'm leaving an impact where I never thought of it before. So you see what I'm saying? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. You're 100% spot on there, Nina. And the other thing too that I've noticed over the years is you just show up better,
Yeah.
right? Like you can show up for the people you love better because you feel better about where you're at and how
Hmm.
you feel personally. It's made me a better husband in a lot of different ways,
Hmm.
right? And the other challenge to all this too is time, right? Like we're a very fast paced society, and to carve out the time that we need to just maybe take that walk in the woods, or to step back for a minute and really think about okay, well, what did I actually consume today, and oh,
Right.
how was my sleep last night, and actually to be thinking about these things and in tune
Yeah.
with that is a whole other layer to this, right? Where I think we have to slow that down and actually follow those breadcrumbs and then figure out sometimes for ourselves, okay, well, what works and what doesn't work, and then trust obviously the external advice when you can get it, but really be in tune with who you are and how you feel and what you need, I think is really, really important.
Yeah, it is very important, and stuff that, because of our way of working, right? Constantly working and thinking about the next dollar or whatever it is we're doing, a lot of us don't pause. We don't pause to think of that. We barely pause to think of the family that we have that we should be spending time with, right? So tell me how you got into wellness though, because okay, I
Mhm.
understand that you got the revelation as a 12-year-old and you started to feel better. But why that journey? Like, what took you there? And how did you start this now? Because now you've written books, you do a lot of talking and speaking, you work with clients. So how did we start this journey?
Yeah, so I would say, When I was in high school, I grew up in a small town, and, a very blue collar town. Everybody graduated and went and worked at the factory.
Hmm.
Um, and I always felt that I was a bit different. I always just felt, I don't know if this is for me. I want to spread my wings. I want to, see the world. And so it kind of goes back to there. So blending in, this love for physical activity, for this pursuit of not only growing as a person, but just trying to feel good as a student, really kind of led me down the road of going to a university. So I left my small town. I went to a university, and I did a background in human kinetics, so sports medicine,
Mm.
and then went on to do education. And I really found that I love the educational component to personal growth, development, and well-being. Um, the science is one thing, and I appreciate the science for what it is, but I really love the anecdotal side of that, the
Hmm.
conversational side of that, and the massive opportunity and space that's out there to really talk about and improve and move forward. So I went to university, did that, and then even in university, like I tried a lot of different things. I ran a personal training business at one point. I was doing some guest writing. I used to have a blog called Wellness Network Blog, and it was on the Blogspot platform.
Oh, I remember
Uh,
that. I had a black spot.
yeah,
Oh my gosh.
yeah, it still exists. It wasn't good. I'll tell you that. It was not good, but
That's
I
funny.
loved it. I was like, oh, I love writing this blog. So you kind of had this entrepreneurial mindset really at that stage in my life, but I wasn't really sure exactly where I would land. And
Right.
it wasn't really until I kind of get into my late 20s, having worked in the wellness in educational wellness for a few years at that point, that I really wanted to jump into these other identities, to become an
Hmm.
author,
Hmm.
to become a consultant, to become a speaker, and to really step into that. And I think, for me, it was a confidence thing, but it was also, I felt like I had to just stay in one box for a long time. And then I realized, well, wait a second, you can kind of create your own box, your own niche, and just roll with it and learn as you
Yeah.
go. And I've been really blessed to have those opportunities along the way to learn. My first book was not perfect, but you learn, you grow, and you figure it out
Right.
for the next one. So it's been a lot of fun, and who knows where the journey will take me in the next 5 or 10 years. But I'm sure it'll be exciting. That's for sure.
It's funny because you're like, wait a minute, I don't have to do this. And you're right. I mean, you did that in high school, right? You got out of high school, you're like, yeah, I don't want to go to the factory. You do it now, like, yeah, I
Right.
don't want to do this. I'm gonna do something new. So that's in your nature, it looks like, like you just want to expand and see different things, do different things, impact different ways. And so now the I know you have Foy Consulting as well. And then you wrote the books. And so I love the title. I don't know if this is your newest book or the last book, the one about working remotely, like the well-being, right? I want to know about that because I was a director for 8 years, 10 years, whatever it was. And I also was the director through that time in our life when everybody shifted to working from home, except for my team. We were a culinary operation. So we had, we fed over 300,000 people throughout the time we were closed. We gave like 200,000 pounds of food, or, it was a lot of work. It was fantastic, I thought, because I was out of the house almost every day. 5 days a week, I was out of the house doing the work. So I never felt the effects that a lot of people did feel, right?
Mhm, mhm.
Especially people who shifted from working in an office with around people to working from home. Is that what like drove you to write that book? Is that the season, or was this something that was always in you, like people who work from home? Tell me about that.
Yeah, great question, Nina. And I love that we're at a point where we can talk about the pandemic maybe as past tense,
Yeah,
which is great.
yeah, it is fantastic.
Um, but it's similar, so I always knew I had another book in me. I'll start there. I knew, at some point I'm going to write another one. But it takes a lot. It's a lot. It takes a lot out of a
Yes.
person when you're kind of managing all the aspects of that. But my work was, I'd always had this kind of side work that was remote. The business was remote, but my full-time work was in person. And when the pandemic hit, we did what every other organization in Canada and in the United States and across the world did, is you kind of hit the panic button and you
Hmm.
send as many people home as you can, and figure it out from there. And I remember thinking to myself, I'm a pretty optimistic person. I'm a pretty health conscious person. I have a good routine. I'm regularly active, eat well, sleep well, things like that. And I was struggling.
Mhm.
I was struggling socially. I was struggling emotionally. There was so much coming at us, like just policy changes. And I mean, we all know we don't need to go back
Yeah.
there, right? It
Yeah.
was very turbulent time. But I remember talking to my wife and thinking, if I'm struggling, there's probably hundreds of thousands, maybe millions of people out there that are really struggling with
Facts.
this transition.
Mhm.
And so I actually went on to Amazon. I Googled, remote work books that support well-being, and there was none. There was maybe one on the market by Jason Fried, who wrote one called Remote back in, I think, 2015. And even he was trying to get the license from his publisher to give it away for free because everybody was buying it. Um, anyway, long story short is I was like, well, there's probably an opportunity here. And, if there's someone to write it, why not me? So
Right.
I wrote the book. I actually pulled, for any listeners that are familiar with Mark Twain's work, I actually went to a cabin. I was in quarantine for 14 days up in Canada and wrote this thing in 14 days in the woods.
Wow.
So I know Mark Twain was like famous for going to a cabin in Maine with a cat, and there's a story there. But
Right.
anyway, so I digress. But so I wrote it in 14 days and then went through all the process pieces to get it out and then launched it. And it was a huge success. It hit the market at the right time, but it
Wow.
also hit people when they needed it most.
Mhm. Mhm.
It really changed the conversation. It was focused on the freelancer, the contractor, the practitioner, not on the employer. And it was more about how do you build individual boundaries? How do you set routines up? And how do you still find ways to connect and not just communicate, because we still need connection.
Yeah.
And these are just some of the things I talk about. I can dive into it, but it really just took a bit of a spin on how we look at remote work and well-being for the long haul, because like many, once it kind of gets out of the box, it's hard to bring back in. I think we're seeing
Yeah.
that now with remote
Yeah.
work, that it's possible. So if it is possible, how do we be well for the rest of our lives in a career of
Yeah.
that? And that's really what the book focuses on.
Yeah, that sounds like a part 2 book you need to write. How do we do this now for the rest of our lives, right?
Right.
Because that is what's happening, right? And I mean, I even had family members who had to work from home, and I remember calling one of them and saying, "Hey, I haven't seen you in like a couple months. What's going on? You want to go out to dinner?" "Well, I don't know if I want to go." "Well, we haven't seen you. Like, what have you been doing?" "Nothing. Working from home, staying home, doing nothing." Almost to the point that I started being concerned with whether or not that person was agoraphobic, right? They didn't want to go outside and be around humans anymore, you know?
Mhm.
And I think that happened to a lot of people. And that happens to all of us, right? We start to get accustomed to something, you get comfortable in it, and then it starts to now get uncomfortable to go back the other way. That's why I said I think it was very fortunate for me that I had to run a team in the culinary, in the kitchen, because it helped me to not have to do that. I was
Mhm.
around people all the time. And that was super helpful for my well being, for my mind. Also, because I'm an extrovert. And so being around people energizes me. So that was, so when I was speaking to people who were really struggling, I was trying to really understand it, but I didn't have that experience, which
Mhm.
is good, right? For me anyway, it was good for me. But this is a real thing, and so now the issue, and you hit it, is that people are having a hard time going back. And I'm not in the restaurant business anymore, but it was hard to find employees, really hard, because they don't want to come back and they don't want to work that hard, right? So what do we do? Like, I mean, you talked about well-being.
Yeah.
So let's talk about well-being. Like, what do they do? What do we do as people who do work from home now? Because that's what I'm doing. Ryan, let me tell you, it's taking me a minute to get used to this. Okay. I'm already looking at my husband like, I think I got to go get another restaurant job. He goes, "Are you kidding me? You got 20 things you're doing." I'm like, "I know, but I got to get out." Right. So
Yep.
tell us about
Yep.
that. Tell us about what's like the first steps you think needs to happen for somebody to have well being if they're going to do a remote work.
Yeah, you have some great points here, Nina. I feel like we could have a whole conversation just on this, because I'm fascinated with it, because I feel like we're still in the early days of the science experiment.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
we're still trying to figure out, is this fully going to work? But I would say, yeah, the first place to start, and I always talk about this, is just, I actually read a really good book. It's called Green Lights by Matthew McConaughey. We all know Matthew McConaughey.
Yeah,
It's actually a fantastic book.
I heard.
Um,
I haven't picked it up yet.
yeah, there's one in the book. He has what's called bumper stickers, and these bumper stickers are just thoughts from his journal that are just kind of profound thoughts. And in one of the bumper stickers says, you need structure to create freedom.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, obviously when we were in the height of the pandemic, it was so structured. Everything was so structured, right? You got to stand here. Stores are only open here. You can only do curbside here. And, we went through that. Excuse me. But when we look at structure, it really does create freedom for us. And
Mm-hmm.
so what I mean by that is, and when we're talking about remote work, I've heard a lot of people really struggle with the boundaries. They really struggle with, okay, when am I actually off for the day? When do I actually start my day?
Yeah.
I think you have to create that structure early and stick to it as often as possible. And so one of the key tips that I give everyone is, find that one psychological trigger or cue that will allow you to shut off at the end of the day or start your day. And for
Mm.
me, it's actually the lamp at my desk. So at the beginning of the day, I always turn the lamp on and I'm game mode. I'm like, okay, now I'm full on void consulting or, day job or whatever it is. But at the end of the day, I turn the lamp off. And even if I don't need the lamp, it's just the psychological trigger
Right.
that allows me to step away and now be full on husband, dog dad, walk in the park, living life. So when you create those boundaries, you create those structures, you create those triggers for yourself, great things can happen. You can actually
Mm-hmm.
protect your well-being a bit more. And I recognize it's not always easy for people to do that, but figuring out what works for you, figuring out your flow, figuring out when you work the best and
Mm-hmm.
what triggers you can kind of lean on to help you start and stop your day will help protect you and allow you to kind of
That's
flourish a
really
little bit
good.
more in that long-term environment. So that's just one. I guess if there was a starting point, Neena, it
Yeah.
would probably be there is figure out your structure, stand by it, hold steadfast with that, and then create those psychological triggers when you can.
Yeah, that's really good. Really, really good. Because I've only been doing remote work since May when I left my job to come down to a different state, right? And I've always, since I was 12, I've worked. I've never not worked, right? So it's like it was a real shock to my system, real shock. Almost to the point was and I'm not a person who ever gets depressed, but I started to feel a little bit like that. And I'm like, whoa, this is not good. Something's up. But I started doing what you're talking about. I didn't have the triggers, but what I did do is I set up my times throughout the day in Pomodoros, right? So I did like 25 minutes of focused time, went and got a cup of water for 2 minutes, came back, 25 more minutes, and did all that. What I did find is that I was so damn productive that I wanted to work all day, all night. So I didn't have to trigger the boundaries. So now my actual trigger is when I hear my husband. Like when my husband's home, usually around the same time, he's like clockwork. Then I know, oh, okay, it's time for me to like wind down now. My husband's home. But if he didn't come home or if he was away, Ryan, I'm screwed because he's the trigger, right? So I love that. I love that you're giving somebody that tip though, because I know people who are listening right now. Like I said, a lot of them are entrepreneurs, so they're working from home.
Mm-hmm.
And I think one of the misconceptions is that because you're an entrepreneur, that you have to work 52 hours in a day. And there's not even that many hours in a day, right?
Right.
So,
Right.
are there other things they could do? Like, is there
Yep.
how about nutrition, right? How about not just mindset, but how about their body, like drinking water or taking that break or all of that kind of stuff? Do you talk about that or incorporate that?
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple things in the book, I have what's called the 5-step energy amplifier blueprint, which is a series of questions and actions you can take for each part of your day to
Oh,
kind of
cool.
set you up for success. So that's all in there. And then I have a precursor to that, which is an energy audit. So you can kind of ask yourself these personal questions about where is your energy going, yeah, to allow you to kind of reclaim some of that. So I do talk a little bit about that. From a nutrition standpoint, I've had this conversation recently on another podcast because, my wife and I have had lots of conversations. It's hard to eat healthy. It's expensive right now.
Mm-hmm.
Anywhere in North America, you can't get away from it. But one of the things we try to do is control that in terms of what's in our home, right? Because if
Yeah.
the extra cookies are in the house, we're going to end up eating them.
Mm-hmm.
But if they're not in the house, well, we're a 1-car household, and I'm not going to run 10 miles down the road to get a cookie. I don't want it that bad, right?
Right.
So you can kind of control that a little bit, and I think that's maybe just one strategy there. I really like your strategy actually about getting up and doing the water thing. For me, it's like every about 50 minutes in or an hour in a day, I get up and do 10 minutes of just taking the dog out, or
Yeah.
going for a quick walk, or just doing something mindless around the house to refocus my eyes, but also just to come down, because you're just so
Mm-hmm.
stimulated with emails and notifications and messages and calls and everything. So stepping away from that every hour is not a bad idea.
Mm-hmm.
The one thing I will say too, Neena, that I find really interesting, and in Canada, we had some real heavy social restrictions
Yeah.
in the pandemic, and now we're seeing the mental health fallout from that, and it's
Mm-hmm.
really sad to see. But one of the things I've been advocating for, and I continue to advocate for, and this from your work and connecting with people all over the world, is there's a difference between communicating and connecting. And
Yeah.
I think there
Love that.
are ways that we can connect with people, even if it is virtually. If we make this space for it, we make it relaxed, we set the tone, we make it comfortable, we can still have really strong connections. And, for anybody listening in that is, that freelancer, that contractor, entrepreneur working remotely, find your people, whether
Yeah.
it's locally, if it's online, make space to not just communicate with them, but actually connect with them. Set
Mm-hmm.
aside the
Mm-hmm.
time, get on screens, talk to each other, have that real time with them. Because, one of the biggest things that came out of the pandemic was remote workers are extremely lonely. Well, it's like,
Yeah.
duh, they're
Yeah.
working remote, but it's like, okay, but what do we do with that? And I think one of the things is we have to remember that we're communicating more than ever as a society, but there's a difference between the communication and the connection, and to be very clear when you want to connect with someone and how important that is.
So give us what you like a really good example of connecting. Because people think communication is connecting. So give me a good example.
Yeah, a good example is so I get analytics in my email saying, you've communicated with X amount of people, and it's like 80 people,
Right.
80 people a week I'm communicating with. It's very transactional, right? I need something, they need something, we're sending that transaction, right? This is how our economy works now. But connecting is, for example, we've instituted a policy at my full-time job where every Monday we spend the first 45 minutes of our meeting just chatting, catching up. There's no
That's good.
agenda.
That's good.
It's, we're talking about our weekends, we're sharing pictures. One of our staff just got back from Greece, and we had like a slideshow of Greece, and we're asking questions, we're pulling up the map. Oh, where are we at in Greece? And so I know what's going on in my colleague's life. I'm part of I'm seeing it, but I'm also like hearing it firsthand from them and listening
Mhm.
to the food and the restaurants they went to. And it's not rushed. It's just time. And in a time where we're constantly focused on productivity, I really, really love those Monday morning meetings where you're
Yeah.
actually just taking that time to know your colleagues, to know what are they having for tea on the weekends? What kind of plants are they planting in their garden? You get to know them so much more, and they get to know you, and you actually leave those meetings feeling full because you're like, well, I could transact this over the email, but I actually feel like I know who
Yeah.
I'm connecting with. And so that's kind of a way that we've done
That's a
it.
good example. Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think that's something that, for those of you who are listening who are CEOs and are, team leaders and stuff, that's a fantastic way for you to connect with your team. Because I think that we go in is always with business on the mind. We got to get business done, right? It's Monday, the weekend's done. We got to get business done. But how much better would your team produce? Like, how much better would they produce if you just tapped into their lives, right? And I did that with my team. I implemented every day a 15-minute coffee break. And what we would do is we would go in the back and, make croissants or whatever we had to make because we were in a kitchen. And then we would all sit as a team, like, hey, what's up? What was your weekend? Like, oh my God, your son did that. That is hilarious. Like that kind of stuff. Right. And being though I was the director of the whole thing, I felt like one of them and they felt like I was their friend. And that was just a really special moment. So I'm glad that you guys do that. That helps a lot too with mental health. Mental health is a big problem right now, and connection is what they're missing. All of us. I don't think I think the only time we're alone is when we're born, right? When we're just coming out of the womb or in the womb. But we really do want connection. We really, really do. So
Mhm.
I think that the work you're doing is fantastic. I can't wait. I'm gonna have to pick up this book because I need some sanity and boundaries in my life. But I'm really glad you're doing this. So if somebody wants to work with you, do you work with people like on one-on-one, or what does that look like?
Yeah, absolutely. So, definitely organizations looking for support. Happy to have a
Right.
conversation on what that can look like. Individually, yes. So I do some online coaching.
Okay.
Mostly my coaching is for folks that are looking to write their first book, or even their second
Oh,
book, and they're
good.
looking to kind of do it a little more efficiently and get it to market, with more success.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, I'm always open to talking about my books, sharing that. I do a lot of writing on Medium as well, so you can check that out on Medium. I talk about strategies for what I call upliving,
Mm-hmm.
which is another kind of verb I took from McConaughey's book. But yeah, I just love connecting with the online community whenever possible, so folks can reach out anytime and yeah, just have a conversation about how I can help.
Is there a specific genre that you like to work with when it comes to the books, like personal development, or what do you like to work with?
Yeah, good question. So I mostly work with non-fiction authors.
Okay.
So I don't really touch fiction. So if
Mhm.
you're looking to write a non-fiction book, anything from I've had authors in the wellness space, I've had authors in the faith and spirituality space, introversion, personal development, personal growth.
Awesome.
I have done a little bit of children's books, but not I wouldn't advertise that as much, but
Right.
I can if folks are interested in that too. So
Autobiographies?
autobiographies, yes, yeah, I can
Great.
do
Great.
those. I've done one on geomatic systems, so I can help
Oh,
coach
interesting.
folks through that. Yeah, so really, what if the author's fired up and excited, that's the main thing, right? Like if you're
Yeah.
excited about the topic, and I kind of compare myself to a realtor in the book space where you can buy and sell a home without a realtor, but it can be painful. I'm glad we had a realtor for our home, and I kind of do that, serve that role for writers, and that I try to get them the best possible space on the market that's super saturated,
Yeah.
and kind of lead them there with efficiency and with as little cost as possible. So that's kind of what I do there to help authors get their work
That's
out and share it with
fantastic.
the world.
That's really, really great. And you do, I know that you probably do most of everything online, correct? Yeah.
Yep. Everything's online. So I just had a fella in New York, actually, I was just working with. So from one island up here in Canada to another island in Long Island, it was great to work with that person.
Good.
So
That's awesome. So before I wrap up and let you go, I do want to know for those who are listening, because I know that a lot of people I speak to, I wrote my autobiography as well. And, but no, I'm not teaching anybody, nor am I putting it out there because I don't want to do it. No, no, I will do it again for myself, but it is work. It is work and there's a lot to learn. So for those who want to work with you, whether it's just a hop on a call with you to see if you're a good coach for them or learn about, maybe a strategy that they have for a book that's in them, how do they get in contact with you? Where can they follow you? Stuff like that.
yeah, so you can definitely go to foyconsulting.org. That's my website. So it's just my last name spelled Fahey consulting foyconsulting.org. My email is also on there. There's a little widget. People can connect with me. Yeah, happy to continue the conversations, to connect on any ways I can add value and support. And yeah, stay tuned. I got a new book coming out, which I'm so excited about as well. It's a bit more of a broad topic, but super timely, Neena. So maybe I'll have to come back next year
You
and
sure
we'll have
do.
to, digest that one together. It should be good. So
Yeah, good. Is it worth mentioning now or is it not coming out for some time?
Yeah, no, I can mention it for sure.
Mention it.
Yeah, so the book is called Listen, How to Be You in a World Where You Can
Oh,
Be Anything. So super
oh,
fascinating, right?
that's gonna
Like,
be big.
yeah, I talk a lot about, where we should take advice from and where we shouldn't take advice from.
Love it.
Talk a lot about, the economics and where we're going and the opportunities like this. Like, here we are connecting in the podcast space. This is booming.
Hmm.
But how do you know if that's what you want to do, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
I talk a lot about that and just strategies for figuring that out in a world where literally you can do anything.
right.
And so, how do you make space to pause and really think that through and, make sure it's aligned with who you are as a person and what you value. And so I'm really excited for it to get to market. By the time this episode goes live, it'll be up on Amazon, so you can check it out there.
Are you locking yourself up in a cabin somewhere again?
No, actually, just right behind me here, for anybody that's watching the video, this is my little writing space. So
Oh, good.
it's been about a year of writing it, and yeah, it's all coming together. But it's funny. I felt like after my last one, I wouldn't write anymore, Nina. But then it's like, oh, then this idea hits you, and then you got to write. And
You
I
got it
think after
right.
this one, I told my wife, this is just my next book. I
Yeah.
probably will write another book. So my wife
Yeah.
is prepared that, there's probably another one in me at some point. So
I love it. Thank you so much, Ryan, for coming on and having this conversation with me and, really pouring into people in the way that you do and just having them realize that, the remote space, especially, people who are working from home, you're not alone. You're not alone. I know it feels that way, but you'd be surprised about everybody who feels that way and they're all not alone. Right. So if you are listening to Ryan and you are like, you know what, I like this guy, I like his vibe, I like what he's saying, you guys know how to contact him. And I really wanted to thank you for being here, Ryan. Thank you so much. I appreciate you. Thank
yeah,
you.
thank you, Nina. And for everyone who was listening in, I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thanks for tuning in and sharing part of your day with us. And we'll hopefully be chatting again soon.
Yes, I hope so. So, guys, you know how I do. You know that I put all the notes in the bottom for you so that you can reach out to him. Make sure that you like, share, subscribe, all that great stuff. And if you know somebody that has a book in them, a nonfiction book, give them Ryan's information because he can help them with that, structure that, and do all that work that has to get done with that. But most of us have something in us that really the world needs and only you carry, because it's your experiences, your work, your ideas. It's you, and a lot of times what you are going to bring to the world. Maybe somebody else has bought it up, but not like you because you are the only you. So thank you guys for being here. I love you to pieces. Make sure that you follow because it's super important. So I'm going to put his information below. If you have any questions or anything, you know where to reach me. This is Neena Perez, Straight Talk, No Sugar Added. Until next time.